There comes a moment almost everyone learning watch repair is going to hit. You open a watch, you find the problem, and the part either doesn't exist or it's going to cost you more than the watch is worth. And you sit there thinking to yourself, you must be doing something wrong. Well, you're not. You just hit the ceiling of level one. Now, watch repair looks like one thing when you're looking from the outside, but it really isn't. There are three distinct levels, each with its own skill set, its own tooling, and its own ceiling or limit. Most people never realize which level they're in until they run straight into the wall. I'm Alex, and this is Watch Repair Tutorials. This is the level where everyone learning watch repair starts in the beginning. The first thing to learn is just how to do a basic service on a watch. You buy a movement, you take it apart, you're learning how to work with very small parts. You develop a cleaning routine. You learn how to start inspecting parts to see what they look like when everything is functioning properly, right? You're going to develop your assembly process. You're going to start checking the systems as you assemble the movement, and you start working on doing lubrication the right way. Then you move on to learning how to regulate the movement. And then for a lot of people, you end up casing the watch. You put it in a watch case with a dial and hands, and now you have a functional watch to wear. Now, the next logical step for most people is to start working on movements like the NH35. They're relatively low cost, and the parts availability for this movements is actually really, really good. With these, if you screw up a hairspring on an NH movement, it's very easy to get a new balance complete. You can buy a brand new movement for these things for $50 and have all kinds of parts. Things like mainsprings and calendar parts are readily available, and you don't need to be a professional watchmaker to be able to buy these parts. I think it's one of the main reasons the modding community is as big as it is because the parts availability is endless and the parts really aren't that expensive. And I also know that a lot of people love working on Seiko 7S calibers, kind of for the same reason. You can buy an entire parts movement for almost nothing. And if you want to upgrade to a more modern movement, you can just use the NH series instead. Now, some of you are going to gravitate towards Russian movements for that exact same reason. And other people, they're going to gravitate towards vintage Swiss movements like the AS 1130 or the FHF 96, 97, or even the 72 family of movements. Now, even though these parts are no longer manufactured, there's still plenty of parts available, as well as very inexpensive parts movements that you can purchase to scrap parts from to use in your watch repair. Within this level, you're going to have things like, working on quartz watches, whether it's just replacing batteries or swapping a broken movement out for a new one. That's a very common thing that many people just love to do. Replacing straps and bracelets would also fall in this level. Then there's cutting and fitting a new stem for a new movement, which for many people is the first thing that they do that's actually moving into level two watch repair. And then, of course, you have crystal replacement. Now, this usually starts off with polishing the crystals, and then a lot of people will end up buying an inexpensive crystal lift or a crystal press so that they can also install mineral and sapphire crystals. This is all level one, and this is where a lot of people in the watch repair hobby will stay. You learn enough about how the movements work to be able to recognize when a part is bad, and then you just replace the part. You might have anywhere from $500 to $1,000 invested in the hobby, and for the majority of people, that's where they're going to stay, and there's nothing wrong with that. But at this level, you have to realize there are limits to how far you can go. Now, take the Seiko fan who ventures out and decides to buy a Seiko 6105, better known as the Captain Willard. He got it at a relatively good price, considering what other ones go for. And once they get inside the watch, they discover that there's a problem with the hairspring. So it's not running right. The coils may be bunched up together, or the collet's not centered, or the spring's not flat, whatever. It could be any number of things. Well, now you're in a situation where you can't easily find a balance complete. And if you do, it's going to be really, really expensive because in this watch, so many people want to work on these. What are you going to do? Are you going to try to repair it with no experience working on hairsprings? Everyone knows who's tried it for the first time that it's probably not going to go very well. So they just end up making it worse. And that's the ceiling for level one. The parts are discontinued, or if you can find a part, it's going to cost more than the watch is worth. And that's when people start moving over to level two. Now, level two is where the actual watch repair starts. At this level, you can stop depending so much on the supply houses and you start depending on your hands and your skills that you develop. A bent hairspring now gets repaired, not replaced. A worn pivot gets polished instead of replaced. The balance gets straightened out and adjusted instead of replaced. And now we start looking at making adjustments to the escapement. Now, as you may know, the vast majority of vintage movements fall into this level. With patience, you're going to be able to find parts with your knowledge of the right suppliers. And you may even have a drawer full of donor movements waiting for you. But you can't always click your way through it. When the hairspring gets coned during service or because you're dealing with used parts, you have to be able to fix it. That's a different skill than level one. It's not as easy as just watching a video or reading something out of a book. You now have to take the time to develop the skill you've learned. And to do that, it takes practice and time. Truing a balance wheel back to original condition can take, 6 months to a year of constant practice to get good at it. Basic hairspring corrections, like getting it flat or getting the coil spacing right. This can all take up to 1 or 2 years of practice to do without actually making things worse. Pivot polishing on a jacket lathe. Well, this also takes time to get the feel right so that you're not breaking the pivots. Acquiring the skills and the knowledge to be able to dynamically poise the balance wheel with timing screws also takes time to develop. But when you're working on railroad grade movements, like the Hamilton 992B, it's a skill that the movement almost expects you to have. And then, of course, there's the escapement. Probably the most difficult part of the watch to understand and to be able to adjust it and make repairs. This is the one area that really separates a good watchmaker from a great watchmaker. If you think that feeling you get when you're new, when you put the balance into the movement and it kicks on and starts running, that exhilaration that you feel is nothing compared to the feeling of taking a non-running movement and being able to adjust the pallet stones and then adjust the banking pins and watching that movement come to life. For me, that's the one thing that made this incredibly interesting for 35 years. And here's where the real investment in tools and the investment in your skills to be able to use them have to be acquired. Everyone is pretty familiar with probably the two biggest tools that you need in level two to handle a lot of these repairs. One is the staking set, and the other is the jeweling set. But believe me, there are many, many other small tools that have very specific uses that you're going to need as well. when you're dealing with micromechanics. Level two is where most working watchmakers and amateur watchmakers as well live for their entire career. A good watchmaker can keep the vast majority of watches that they'll ever encounter running well. Now, the further you go back in time, the less likely you're going to find any parts at all for many different types of watches. I don't mean that parts are just hard to find or they're very expensive. I mean, they don't exist at all. I have a friend, Tim, who runs a website called timtellstime.com, and he really specializes in vintage American pocket watches. He told me about a job that came in, a Patek Philippe pocket watch with a broken balance staff and a couple other problems. Now, this was a family heirloom that was still in its 18 karat gold case, and it had been passed down through this gentleman's wife's family for many years. And they'd had it for about 7 years and it wouldn't run. Now, you think there's any balance staffs for vintage Petites on eBay? Well, no, of course not. So Tim used his watchmaking skills and he made a new balance staff for this customer who couldn't find anyone else to do it. So not only did he end up with a happy customer, but he earned a customer for life because the work he'd done to train himself in level three made him the watchmaker he is today. So, if you're interested in buying an old English or Swiss pocket watch, you can pretty much forget about finding parts for them. In many cases, you won't even be able to identify what movement it is because all these were Epoch movements. So, you might ask yourself, why would these types of pocket watches be so hard to identify when American pocket watches are so easy? Well, there's a reason there are no parts for these watches. And it really just goes back to how they were made in the first place. These movements were put together by sellers that were sourcing parts from all these little individual workshops all over Switzerland that specialized in making one particular type of watch part. Then the seller, they would bring all these parts together and then they would have somebody who had the skills to assemble the watch. There was no part supply line. That came many, many years later when one of the engineers from Longines came to the United States and he started touring all the American watch factories specifically to learn what they were doing and how they were handling their parts in manufacturing. This part of watch repair, level three, is the part that requires you to be able to set up a lathe. And not only set up the lathe, but to understand how to use it and develop the skills to start making parts. The lathe doesn't just expand on what you can fix. In many cases, it can almost replace the whole supply chain entirely. With a lathe, you can make a balance staff for any movement. You can replace a broken pivot by drilling out the old one and pressing in a new one. You can turn winding stems, and you can make tooling that you can't buy anymore. You can take parts that are close to being correct and modify them so that they work in the movement that you're working on. Now, getting to this level is a real commitment. A working setup for a lathe can run anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 to do it properly. Then you got several months of learning just how to use the machine before you even make a real part. And then, for a lot of people, it's going to take 6 months to a year just to be able to make a balance staff. But once you're there, you're going to run into very few watches that you can't save. The movements that require this type of skill include things like pre-war American pocket watches, vintage Swiss watches from long gone makers, English antique movements, some of which have the strongest collector interest and the fewest people alive who can actually fix them. Don't think of these three levels as a ladder that you have to climb. Some people stay in level one or level two their entire working lives, and they do excellent work there. Level one is a real craft itself. And knowing how to work the supply chain well is actually a genuine skill. Now, if you're frustrated or you feel like you've hit this wall in your watch repair journey, ask yourself this honest question: am I out of parts or am I out of skill? Because that answer changes everything about what you do next. As always, thanks for watching, and because there's so much more to learn, I hope to see you in the next video.